Every second, Google processes 99,000 searches. That's over 8.5 billion every day. Some of them are predictable, like how many days until Christmas, which has been searched 1.4 million times, mind you. Others, completely unexpected. But these facts are so frequently Googled that they reveal what the world is secretly obsessed with. I'm Mike with List25, and after hours of research, I found the 25 most Googled facts ever. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Can you pay for stuff with Superman coins? This sounds like something straight out of a DC fan's dream. Metropolis, Krypton, the whole deal. But believe it or not, it's a real question that's got people curious. Superman-themed coins do exist, often released as collectibles by mints like the Royal Canadian Mint. Some of these coins are actually legal tender, meaning, in theory, you could use them to buy something, if the store is willing to accept them. However, while they might have an official face value, their worth to collectors is usually much higher. Spending a rare Superman coin on a cup of coffee would be like trading a vintage comic book for its original cover price. It just wouldn't make much sense. So while these coins are technically money, they're far better suited for display cases than cash registers. All right, let's talk about one of the most terrifying events that keeps creeping back into Google searches. How did World War II start? Maybe you watched a war documentary, overheard a debate, or just had one of those late-night Google rabbit hole moments. Before you knew it, you were piecing together how the world plunged into chaos a second time. Don't worry, you're not the only one. How did World War II start is among the most Googled questions ever. To understand 1939, you have to rewind to 1919. The Treaty of Versailles left Germany in shambles, economically wrecked and politically unstable. Then came the Great Depression, which made things even worse. Then came Adolf Hitler, who rode that resentment to power in the 30s, vowing to restore Germany's greatness. Then came September 1st, 1939. Germany invaded Poland. Britain and France issued an ultimatum, but Hitler didn't blink. By September 3rd, war was declared. What followed was a war more devastating the world had ever seen. Now, the next one on this list isn't so apocalyptic sounding. How do cats purr? This question has left plenty of people scratching their heads, so much so that they've turned to Google for answers. Because, let's be honest, how do they even do that? Actually, a cat's purr starts in its brain. Once the brain gives the signal, the throat muscles begin rapidly contracting, anywhere from 25 to 150 vibrations per second. This creates that familiar soothing rumble we all know and love. But here's where it gets interesting. Purring isn't just a sign of happiness. Cats also purr when they're nervous, in pain, or even trying to heal themselves. Yeah, their purring frequencies have been linked to bone regeneration and muscle repair. So the next time your cat purrs, just know it can mean anything from I love you to I'm activating my built-in healing powers. Now, let's look at search queries for wild cats. Why do tigers have stripes? I'll admit, adding to the tiger's already top-tier aura, those stripes are super cool and fashionista. But you gotta wonder, thousands have actually wondered, but what's really the deal with it? Why do tigers have stripes? Well, it's not just for looks. It's for survival. Tigers are ambush hunters, and their stripes act as natural camouflage. In dense jungles and tall grass, the black and orange pattern breaks up their shape, making them practically invisible to unsuspecting prey. To the human eye, a tiger stands out. But to a deer in the wild, that tiger is just flickers of light and shadow, until it's way too late. And here's the crazy part. Firstly, no two tigers have the same stripes. And wait for it, those stripes aren't just on their fur. They're on their skin too. Shave a tiger, which is totally not advisable by the way, and the pattern stays. Well, it turns out people are not only interested in tigers, they also really want to know this. Is the Eiffel Tower straight? The ultimate romantic picture, thanks to Hollywood, is the Eiffel Tower, standing tall as the backdrop to countless love stories. But some people, instead of swooning, are out there asking a very unexpected question. Is the Eiffel Tower straight? Well, technically, no. The Eiffel Tower isn't perfectly straight. It actually leans ever so slightly. But before you start questioning reality, here's why. The tower is made of iron, which expands and contracts when temperature changes. In the summer, when the sun heats one side more than the other, it causes the metal to expand unevenly, making the tower tilt slightly away from the heat. In winter, it settles back into place. This isn't a construction flaw. It's just physics. Or the previous version of soaring around the world at Epcot. But while folks are questioning the romantic value of the Eiffel Tower, others are searching up something more sinister. Who was Jack the Ripper? London, 1888. A faceless killer lurked in the shadows of Whitechapel, brutally murdering women and vanishing without a trace. Over a century later, and with thousands of Googled questions, the world may finally have an answer. So, back in the late 19th century, fear gripped the city as 5 women, known as the Canonical Five, were slaughtered with surgical precision. The police were clueless, newspapers ran wild, and letters signed Jack the Ripper taunted authorities. But here's where things get crazy. No one was ever caught. That is, until now. Recently, historian Russell Edwards claimed that DNA evidence from a shawl found at one of the murder scenes ties the infamous killer to Aaron Kaminsky, a Polish barber who was the prime suspect at the time. But with the evidence disputed and the case long cold, the real identity of Jack the Ripper may be lost to history. And if you actually love stories like that and true crime, check out our other channel here, Dark Roast Detectives. So, you're welcome. Why is Pluto not a planet anymore? You ever been part of a friend group only to find out one day that you've been kicked out and now everyone keeps asking what happened? Yeah, that's kind of what Pluto goes through. Everybody just wants to know what happened. Why aren't you part of the big planets anymore? Well, back in 2006, the International Astronomical Union, or IAU, got together and decided to set some official rules for what constitutes a planet. It turns out Pluto didn't make the cut. Why? It's small, its orbit is all over the place, and most importantly, it doesn't clear its neighborhood, meaning it shares its space with other objects instead of dominating its orbit. Because of that last rule, Pluto got demoted to a dwarf planet. It's still out there, still orbiting the sun, just without the VIP planetary status. Harsh, right? Kind of sad, too. Well, here's another sad fact people look up. What's the truth about Marilyn Monroe? Decades after her death, Marilyn Monroe, Hollywood's golden goddess, still dominates Google searches. Why? Because her life wasn't just glitz and glamour. It was filled with scandal, heartbreak, and conspiracy theories that refused to fade. So, back in the 50s, Marilyn wasn't just a movie star. She was the movie star. Rising from a troubled childhood, she became Hollywood's ultimate icon. But then the industry saw her as a product, not a person, and behind the dazzling smile was a woman struggling with a lot. In the early 60s, rumors were that Marilyn was entangled in a secret affair with President John F. Kennedy, and possibly his brother Robert. Some claim she knew too much about government secrets. Others say she was becoming a liability. And then, in 1962, she was found dead from an apparent overdose. But was it really an accident? Or a political cover-up? The truth? Well, that's something even Google can't seem to pin down. And here's another fact that keeps people up at night scouring through Google. Why don't we sneeze in our sleep? Have you ever woken up mid-sneeze? No? Well, that's because it literally doesn't happen. And here's why. When you're snoozing, your body isn't just resting, it's running on power save mode. The parts of your brain responsible for triggering sneezes, the sneezing reflex arc, has taken the shift off. Plus, the muscles that help you sneeze, well, they're relaxed too, all thanks to rhamatonia, the body's way of preventing you from acting out your dreams. But don't worry, if something really irritating floats in, your body will wake you up first and then let the sneeze fly. So the next time you feel that pre-sneeze tingle creeping in while you sleep, just know your brain's got it under control. But this isn't the only weird fact about the human body that people are curious about, which brings me to the next most Googled fact. Why do we yawn? That's one of the most Googled questions ever, because, let's be honest, there's something suspicious about our mouths randomly stretching wide enough to swallow a whale, especially when someone else does it first. Modern science suggests yawning helps cool down the brain, increases oxygen intake, and might even be a leftover survival mechanism from our ancestors to stay alert. And the contagious part? It's linked to empathy, your brain subconsciously syncing up with others. So yes, yawning is more than just a sign of sleepiness. And if you yawned while listening to this, which I am fighting right now, well, science wins again. Now, here's a fact you know, but a lot of people don't. What is the hardest natural substance on Earth? Apparently a ton of people are hitting up Google to settle this little debate. What's the toughest thing nature's ever created? If you're picturing some unbreakable mineral forged deep within Earth's crust, you're not far off. It's diamond. Yeah, that shiny little thing people put on engagement rings is actually the hardest natural substance on Earth. Thanks to its ultra-dense atomic structure, it can scratch pretty much anything, except another diamond. But recently, scientists have discovered even rarer materials, like lonsdaleite, a form of carbon that could theoretically be even harder. So while diamonds rule the jewelry world, Mother Nature might still have a few surprises up her sleeve. And since lonsdaleite is extremely rare, it's a bit tough to answer what really is the hardest substance. Speaking of tough, this brings me to this next Googled fact. Who created the Rubik's Cube? I'll admit, I might have been part of this search pool too. The Rubik's Cube is that super cool puzzle that somehow manages to test both your patience and your intelligence at the same time. So it's no surprise people are flocking to Google to find out who came up with this brain-bending contraption. And more importantly, why? The credit goes to Erno Rubik. Back in 1974, the Hungarian architect thought of a way to help his pupils understand the concept of three-dimensional movement. And voila! He invented the cube. Little did he know, he had just created a worldwide obsession. Since then, the Rubik's Cube has evolved from a classroom aid to a competitive sport, with speed cubers solving it in mere seconds. But here's the irony. Erno himself took about a month to solve his own puzzle. Pretty sure if Google had existed back then, he'd probably been right there with the rest of us looking for who invented the Rubik's Cube. Now, here's one you might be curious about. Why are flamingos pink? Well, if you ever wondered that, congratulations, you're not alone. According to Google, thousands of people are puzzled over this feathery fashion statement. After all, these birds aren't born pink, so what's going on? Well, the answer is in their dinner. Flamingos feast on shrimp, algae, and tiny crustaceans packed with carotenoids, pigments that gradually turn their feathers from dull gray to fabulous pink. It's kind of like eating too many carrots and getting an orange tint, except flamingos take it to a whole new level. So yes, flamingos are basically living proof that you are what you eat. But what if they swap their diet for, say, I don't know, blueberries? Well, let's just say the bird-watching world would be in for a surprise. Nature works in fascinating ways, and speaking of surprises for bird watchers, here's another popular Googled fact about birds. Why do birds stand on one leg? You ever noticed how birds casually balance on one leg like they're competing in an invisible game of who can keep their foot up the longest? And judging by how often people Google this, it's a question that's left plenty of folks scratching their heads. The answer? Warmth and efficiency. Birds, especially ones that hang out in water, tuck one leg up to cut heat loss. It's basically their version of stuffing cold toes under a blanket. But that's not all. Some research suggests it might also help with muscle recovery or balance, reducing fatigue from standing all day. So no, they're not striking a dramatic yoga pose or showing off their one-legged skills. Come to think of it, that actually makes for a cool trivia fact to share. Now, you know about birds, but apparently lots of Google searches are about cats. Like this one. Why are cats afraid of cucumbers? I mean, cats might act all tough, but put a cucumber behind them and suddenly they're Olympic-level jumpers. This bizarre reaction has puzzled the internet so much that why are cats afraid of cucumbers ranks among the most Googled questions. The truth? Well, it's not about the cucumbers specifically. Cats have strong survival instincts, and when something sneaks up on them, especially something long and green, resembling a snake, their fight or flight response goes into overdrive. It's pure reflex, not some deep-rooted vegetable vendetta. While the videos are hilarious, animal behaviorists warn against pranking your furry friends this way. Just let them stick to their usual arch nemesis, the laser pointer. But if people aren't wondering about cats, whether big or small, well, then they're Googling about other wild stuff like rat beef. What started the Kendrick and Drake beef? At the moment, Kendrick Lamar is the third most searched person on Google, right behind Trump and Elon Musk. And with Kendrick Lamar performing Not Like Us at the Super Bowl halftime show, aimed squarely at Drake, Google searches exploded. Why? Because plenty of people had no clue how all this started. So, allow me to break it down. This feud has its roots stretching back to 2013, when Kendrick shook the rap world with his verse on Big Sean's Control, calling out Drake and a handful of other rappers. Fast forward 10 years to 2023, J. Cole rapped that he, Drake, and Kendrick were the big three of rap on a song called First Person Shooter, which seems like a compliment, right? Well, not to Kendrick. On Like That with Future and Metro Boomin, he dismissed the idea entirely. Big Three? Nah, just Big Me. That was the moment everything changed. I wonder if me stands for Michael Estrin. It's probably me. Anyway, J. Cole backed out, but Drake and Kendrick went all in, dropping diss track after diss track. Then came Not Like Us, a club anthem so massive it won multiple Grammys and left Drake reeling. His response? Suing Kendrick's label for putting his life and reputation at risk. But Kendrick apparently didn't care. Only doubled down, performing Not Like Us on the biggest stage in the world. And that's how we got here. Whew. And we might as well just look at another Super Bowl halftime performer that's done the world. Was Michael Jackson framed? So, back in the 90s and 2000s, Michael Jackson wasn't just the king of pop. He was the most famous person on earth. But with that level of fame came controversy. And none was bigger than the child abuse allegations that still fuel debates today. MJ's fans keep searching for answers, desperate to defend their icon's legacy. Now here's where things get messy. Many believe Michael was the victim of a calculated takedown. The first accusations in 1993 were settled for millions. Then came the 2005 trial where Michael fought back and was fully acquitted. But by then, well, the damage was irreversible. The worst part? His shocking 2009 death may have buried the truth with him. Being a very sensitive case and with so many still asking, I guess there might still be an answer out there. What happened to Marcus Aurelius? At some point, a lot of people have hit up Google wondering what happened to Marcus Aurelius, probably after seeing his wise quotes on discipline, leadership, or just surviving life without losing your mind. Or, watching Gladiator. The Stoic Emperor Marcus Aurelius, behind Meditations, ruled from 161 to 180 CE. Through war and turmoil, he strongly upheld wisdom and virtue, until his death on March 17, 180 CE, likely from illness. But his personal life? Well, that's where things get messy. His wife, Faustina the Younger, was rumored to have had affairs with gladiators. One of the wildest legends claims that Marcus found out, had one executed, and forced Faustina to bathe in his blood. Which sounds straight out of a Game of Thrones script, right? But historians call this pure gossip. But hey, it does make for a dramatic Google search. After his death, things went downhill. Fast. His son Commodus took over, and let's just say, Stoicism did not run in the family. Let's talk about another family business that gets searched a lot. What is the origin of the Uno card game? Uno is one of those games that everyone plays, but at some point you stop and wonder, where did this come from? Apparently thousands of people have asked Google the same thing. Probably in between plotting their revenge after getting hit with back-to-back wild draw fours. Believe it or not, one of the world's most iconic card games was born out of a family argument. Back in 1971, Merle Robbins, a barber from Ohio, got into a heated dispute with his son over the rules of Crazy Eights. Instead of just agreeing to disagree, like normal people, Merle went full genius mode and created an entirely new game to settle things. That game? Uno. So the next time you're searching, is stacking plus fours illegal? Just remember, you're part of a long tradition of Uno-related Google searches. And that brings me to actually the most Googled fact out there. Why is there a leap day? Alright, we have to admit that lots of people don't know lots of very simple things, but that's exactly what Google is here for. So, allow me to break it down. Every 4 years, February pulls a fast one and adds an extra day, much to the confusion of those born on February 29th who have to explain why their birthday only exists sometimes. No wonder why is there a leap day is one of the most Googled questions out there. Our planet doesn't orbit the sun in a neat 365 days, but rather 365.2421 days. That tiny fraction adds up, threatening to throw our seasons off track. So, back in 45 BCE, Julius Caesar introduced the Julian calendar to fix it, and later Pope Gregory XIII tweaked it into the one we use today. Think of Leap Day as a helpful calendar update. Otherwise, we'd be having Christmas in the summer. Which they do in the southern hemisphere, technically. Why are dogs banned from Antarctica? Of all the oddly specific questions people ask Google, this one ranks pretty high. Who's trying to take their golden retriever on an Antarctic road trip? Well, sled dogs were once essential for exploration, but in 1994, they were banned under the Antarctic Treaty. The big concern? They could spread diseases like canine distemper to seals and disrupt the fragile ecosystem. Plus, the risk of runaway huskies turning Antarctica into their personal playground wasn't exactly ideal. So, as cool as a team of sled dogs sounds, the continent is now a no-pup zone. Next up, the sky. Literally. Why is the sky blue? Ever been on the receiving end of an endless string of why questions from a curious kid? Why this? Why that? And of course the classic, why is the sky blue? Well, if Google had a face, it'd probably be sighing, because this question gets asked a lot. But now that I'm thinking about it, why is the sky really blue? Well, the answer lies in science and sunlight. You see, sunlight might look white, but it's actually a mix of different colors. When it enters Earth's atmosphere, it scatters in all directions. Blue light has shorter wavelengths, meaning it gets scattered the most, basically painting the sky blue for our eyes. So the sky isn't actually blue, it just looks that way because of how light interacts with the atmosphere. And if you were on the moon, where there's no atmosphere, well, say hello to a pitch black sky, no matter the time of day. Skies? Check. All right. How about clouds? How much does a cloud weigh? You know, at first glance, clouds look like they weigh nothing at all. A lot of people just assume, well, that thing looks as light as air. But they'd be so wrong. If they Googled it, as thousands of others have, here's the shocking thing they'd find. The average cumulus cloud weighs around 500,000 kilograms, or 1.1 million pounds. That's the weight of about 100 elephants just floating above your head. But don't panic. The water droplets are spread out over a huge area, making them light enough to stay suspended. So yeah, the sky is casually holding up a 1,000,000-pound cloud while we struggle to carry our groceries in one trip. Let that sink in. Where do kiwis come from? No, not the birds, though New Zealand proudly claims those. I'm talking about the fuzzy green-centered fruit that has confused plenty of Googlers. Because despite its strong association with New Zealand, kiwi fruit actually hails from China. Originally known as the Chinese gooseberry, this tangy treat was cultivated in the Yangtze River Valley for centuries. It wasn't until the early 1900s that New Zealand farmers took a liking to it, rebranded it as kiwi fruit, since, let's be real, Chinese gooseberry is way too long to pronounce and, well, not all that marketable, and that's how it turned into a global sensation. Can you live on a diet of sunlight and air? I know, it sounds absurd. Like, why would anyone need to Google this? Isn't the answer painfully obvious? Well, apparently not, because a surprising number of people are out there asking. And that brings us to breatharianism, a belief that humans can survive solely on sunlight and air. No food, no water, just atmospheric sustenance. Well, to those asking, science gives this idea a hard no. Even the most disciplined monks who practice extreme fasting still consume something, whether it be water, tea, or the occasional modest meal. Yet, despite biology and common sense, some people have attempted this lifestyle, often with dangerous consequences. So if you're thinking of swapping your meals for a deep inhale and some sunbathing, yeah, maybe don't. You're better off Googling a good meal prep plan instead. And that's a wrap for today. And once again, thank you so much to Fume for sponsoring today's video. But hold on, here's a quick trivia nugget for you. Which of these famous movie facts is actually false? A. Sharks in Jaws had real shark footage. B. The DeLorean in Back to the Future was originally supposed to be a fridge. C. The Star Wars line is Luke, I am your father. Or D. Walt Disney was cryogenically frozen. Drop your answers in the comments below. A lot of what we've been told is a lie, far more than we can cover in a single video, but some of the most disheartening lies come from our history books. You'd think that we could trust what we learned in class, but well, that's not always the case. In a recent video, I addressed 25 lies you were told by the history books, and you won't want to miss them. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe.